does it. I'm not going to justify it, but he just bombastic. In a moment, something you might not know. Here's a bulletin for American homeowners. The FBI has been warning about a type of real estate fraud called title theft, and your equity is the target. With just a forged signature, your ownership can be transferred out of your name. Without protection in place, you are left with an emotional and financial nightmare. That's why I partner with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim and protect yourself. Use promo code BILL at HomeTitleLock.com to get a free title history report, plus a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring, urgent alerts, and if you're a victim of fraud, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. So don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BILL.
Hanson's Tree Service at hansonstree.com is your one-stop shop for expert insured tree care and more in the greater St. Louis region and at the Lake of the Ozarks. Visit hansonstree.com for 24/7 emergency tree care, grinding and land clearing, awesome organic mulch, green resource recycling, and more. Tim Jones here to tell you that whether you're dealing with old man winter at your home or business in the St. Louis region or preparing your lake home for spring, call Hanson's to help you out. No job too big or too small. Mention News Talk STL. Receive 10% off all tree care services. hansonstree.com, hansonstree.com.
Now the O'Reilly Update brings you something you might not know. 131 years ago today, the Supreme Court issued a landmark decision. The justices ruled that the nation's income tax was not constitutional. Here is the story behind the case, Pollock versus the Farmers Loan and Trust Company. To help finance the Civil War, Congress imposed an income tax for the first time. The feds took 3% from anyone earning more than $800 a year. In 1893, the government expanded the law to levy tariffs on real estate, inheritance, stocks, bonds, other sources of personal revenue. To comply, a bank named Farmers Loan and Trust announced to its stockholders it would pay the tax directly to the Treasury Department. Well, a Massachusetts man named Charles Pollock owned 10 shares of Fireman's Loan. He sued the bank, demanding they send the full value to him, not the feds. The case made its way to the Supreme Court. On April 8, 1895, the justices ruled in Pollock's favor. They confirmed that taxes levied on income from property and stocks was unconstitutional. In the years after Pollock, Congress did not implement another federal income tax, partly because many politicians feared that new levies also would be struck down by the Supremes. Well, everything changed in 1913 when the 16th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. That resolution is just 16 words. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source derived. The result? In 1860, the average American paid 3% of their income to the feds. Today, that figure has ballooned to 33%. And if you live in places like New York, California, Illinois, Hawaii, and Connecticut, more than half of your paycheck goes to the tax man. Back in a moment. Financial stress is hitting an all-time high. Millions of Americans are stretched thin with no extra money, no room to breathe. And this isn't just lower income households. Middle-class families are also running out of options. If debt has been weighing on you, you are not alone. And waiting usually makes things worse. Interest grows. Minimum payments trap you. Nothing changes. You don't need another loan or to consider bankruptcy. You need a strategy. That's why I like Done with Debt. They build a smart, personalized plan around you and understand what it takes to work toward the biggest reductions possible. Whether you owe $10,000 or much more, their goal is simple: lower what you owe so you keep more of your paycheck. Start with a free consultation at donewithdebt.com. donewithdebt.com. Thank you for listening to the O'Reilly Update. I am Bill O'Reilly. No spin, just facts, and always looking out for you.
News, analysis, opinion.
This is News Talk STL.
HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green.
This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at
newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The White House is claiming victory in the war against Iran, but says the two-week ceasefire is fragile. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt claims the United States achieved its core military goals in Iran.
This is a victory for the United States of America that the president and our incredible military made happen.
But the White House is also being cautious.
This is a fragile truce. Ceasefires are fragile by nature.
Leavitt says Vice President Vance will lead the U.S. negotiating team this weekend in Pakistan talks aimed at finding a permanent end to the war. Greg Clugston, the White House.
Correspondent John Gambreau reports that Israel continues its war with Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Pakistan had said that Israel was going to immediately stop its attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, while saying that he would honor the ceasefire with Iran, said that Israel's war against Hezbollah would continue. That's a major sticking point. And it remains unclear when these talks would start. The Pakistanis, who are one key mediator, said they could start as soon as Friday in Islamabad, but we have not heard from Iran or the United States who it would be sending or when these talks would start. So all this put together really shows how shaky this ceasefire is, and the future of the Middle East hangs in the balance now as we try to sort out what will happen next.
Lunar love knows no bounds. Artemis 2's astronauts took a poignant page from Apollo 8 earlier this week, proposing deeply personal names for a pair of lunar craters. They're seeking permission to name one crater after their capsule integrity and another after Commander Reed Weissman's late wife, Carol. On Wall Street, a good day as the Dow was up by 1,325 points. The S&P advanced 165. More at townhall.com.
Health insurance rates are surging in America, leaving millions without affordable options. If you're sick of having paychecks eaten up by healthcare costs or dealing with mega corporations, then listen to this. Christians don't need to waste money on a broken system. That's why I want to tell you about Christian Healthcare Ministries. It's an alternative to traditional health insurance at half the cost. With CHM, fellow believers contribute monthly to help pay each other's medical bills. There's no enrollment period, so you can join anytime. And you aren't restricted to provider networks, so you choose the doctors and hospitals you want. It's that simple. CHM is not insurance. It's a ministry that puts faith into action. Feel the difference of financial support and biblical care from fellow believers. Join CHM today by visiting chministries.org/wellness. That's chministries.org/wellness.
from the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. The warming trend continues for Thursday. Mostly sunny to partly cloudy and 57 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon. A little breeze out of the southwest. A nice warm day. Friday, cloudy skies, though. Some scattered showers, isolated thunder, but mostly showers on and off from the late morning on into the evening. Doesn't rain that whole time, but there'll be some scattered rain in the region during the day with a high of 71 degrees. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Hey, it's Vic Porcelli. We're sitting here with our great friend, Chris Cooper. Hi, Chris.
What's going on, Vic? How are you?
I hear you wrote another book. This one's an e-book. Is that right?
The Business Owner's Playbook for Financial Clarity. So it is a great book for entrepreneurs. It's a very short guide. Give people, business owners, the ability to understand key questions that are important, such as succession planning, legacy planning, getting the IRS out of our pockets, right? Because do you like paying taxes?
I do not.
I don't think anybody likes paying taxes, right? That just makes sense. And then always talking about protection. And then the other thing from a business owner perspective, what is the biggest asset a business owner has? Probably their business itself, right? We need to make sure we understand what the value of that business is as well.
So this new book, I'm sure, is incredibly expensive, right? How much?
No, it's a free resource.
Oh, it's free.
We provide guidance, we provide education because we want to make sure people feel educated and understanding because sometimes you don't know what questions to ask, and we need to make sure we help arm people with information to ask the right question.
Reach out to Chris and Stacy today at SerenityWealthNow.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors, LLC.
Whether at home or at work, you're mobile.
So when you're mobile, stay mobile.
Keep St. Louis's home for conservative talk with you
Wherever you go.
Download the News Talk STL app in the App Store or at newstalkstl.com.
I thought this was interesting and fortuitous. As I was about to turn into the station today, there's a big, huge truck next to me with a big, huge, I think it was a bulldozer maybe on the back. It was a Hanson's truck. Yeah, that just reminded me that no job is too big or too small for Hanson's Tree Service. Yes, they've got those big, gigantic Tonka toys that we all played with as kids, you know, the big earth movers and all that. And they've also got the delicate equipment as well to work around homesteads, which are often in tricky situations, right? You got some of these older homes in our region, which are overseen by these big oak trees and maples and stuff, and you got to be more surgical. So whether it's a big job or a small job, whether it's a job where you just need Hansons to clear cut a field, or whether you need them to carefully prune just the right branches so they don't take your gutters and electric lines down, that would be Hanson's. Hanson's Tree Service, been in business for decades. Chad Hanson, second generation there at Hanson's, just providing expert insured tree care for all of us here in Eastern Missouri, and now for all y'all at the Lake of the Ozarks as well. Green resource recycling, grinding and land clearing. They've got mountains of gorgeous organic mulch. Everybody's mulching their mulch beds right now. They can bring that to you as well. Hassle-free estimates available online. You can apply for 6 months, same as cash financing if you're an approved customer, and so much more. Again, go to Hanson's Tree Service at hansonstree.com for all your tree needs, whether that's pruning, whether that's clear cutting, whether that's maybe rescuing some big old favorite tree that you have either at your business or your homestead, or whether it's helping you get your lake lot or lake home ready for the summer months ahead, because Hanson's works all over Eastern Missouri and also now at the Lake of the Ozarks. For everything and more that I just described, simply go to hansonstree.com, hansonstree.com.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
Was the president really prepared to wipe out Iran entirely?
Like I said, we had a target set locked and loaded of infrastructure, bridges, power plants. Remember, this is a terror regime. The military regime used all of these things for dual use to fund their military, to fund their terror campaigns. We had a lot of legitimate targets. They knew exactly the scope of what we were capable of. We hit some military targets on Karg, which is a bit of a signal. They can't defend it. Iran ultimately understood their ability, their future, to produce, to generate power, fuel their terrorist regime was in our hands, was in President Trump's hands. That's why they came to the table.
Welcome to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. We're going to be covering that and so much more. Chris, the left, the media, and the TDS sufferers were mad yesterday morning when Trump said he was going to obliterate Iran, and then they seemed to be equally mad when the ceasefire was announced. What do these people want in the Middle East?
Well, as we've seen from their coverage over the last 6 weeks, they are definitely not on America's side. They seem to be rooting for Iran. They seem to be rooting for the president to fail. And I think yesterday showed another example for that. We heard that clip of the Secretary of War saying that they had targets locked and loaded. I think those targets are going to need to be reloaded and locked. Iran announced today that they have shut the Strait of Hormuz down once again. They said their IRGC commander, General Sayed Mahid, said that attacks against Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon, any aggression towards Lebanon is aggression towards Iran. He wrote that on X. He said the Iranian forces were preparing for a heavy response. So this ceasefire that we had yesterday was a very fragile ceasefire, and Iran once again being belligerent and have shut down the Strait of Hormuz once again.
Yeah, you're dealing with a terroristic regime that is known for never telling the truth. It's going to be difficult with the fog of war to somehow craft this peace. The markets seem to bet on more peace, not less. The market's closing up over 1,300 points today for the Dow, 700 points nearly for the NASDAQ. The Newsmax reporting that it was, so for all the media who were confused or concerned or wanted to report something differently, Newsmax reporting that it was Iran's supreme leader, the current one, who did direct negotiators to pursue a deal. So I guess the U.S. may have to say, no, we really meant we were going to obliterate you, and maybe take another step closer before Iran understands that they will be sent back to the Stone Ages.
Yeah, I think the ceasefire is effectively over, especially with this action of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz once again. And Iran has continued to lob missiles at their neighbors. So fragile peace truce that didn't last very long.
Mm-hmm. White House Secretary Carolyn Leavitt had an extensive press conference this afternoon. I listened to a big chunk of it heading back from Jefferson City today. She was asked about the reports of Iran closing the strait following the Israeli military action in Lebanon. It seemed to be a lot of confusion as to whether or not Lebanon was supposed to be part of this peace deal. Mm-hmm. The U.S. and Israel believed it was not. Iran believed it was. Carolyn Leavitt said, well, with respect to the first reporting out of Iranian state media, the president was made aware of these reports before I came to the podium. That is completely unacceptable. So that's the report from Carolyn Leavitt.
Yeah, that's something that we should have gotten worked out before this was announced, if Lebanon was part of this deal or not. I hate to see Iran having a PR coup here of agreeing to a truce, and now they're saying that they are not going to abide by it. Senator Lindsey Graham had some comments. He said, we must remember that the Strait of Hormuz was attacked by Iran. It is imperative Iran is not rewarded for this hostile act. And then Fox News host Mark Levin said, total and complete victory is not the outcome they desired. So I think the world is going to be on the brink of war once again. And I hope that we can get some type of resolution to this before the oil markets and the stock market start doing bad again.
Yeah, Carolyn also reminded the media and the press corps today that the case of what Iran says publicly is very different than what they do privately. We've seen an uptick in traffic in the Strait today. I'll reiterate the president's expectation and demand the Strait of Hormuz be reopened immediately and quickly. That's his expectation. It's been relayed to him privately that what's taking place in these reports publicly are false, Leavitt said. So there's a lot of what Iran says versus what Iran does. And I think the only thing we have to do is wait and see exactly what happens in the Middle East. But we're definitely going to be monitoring that. We have a lot of legal news as well to report on today. There was a pretty wild case that popped up this morning regarding Catholic nuns. Catholic nuns are now suing the state of New York over a law requiring nursing homes to use, get this, we're not past this yet, folks, unfortunately, preferred pronouns and to allow mixed-sex bathrooms in nursing homes. We'll ask Zack Smith about that. The case is pending before the Supreme Court, and more at 4:25.
Yeah, and also a case I want to ask him about. The 8th Circuit Court has let Iowa enforce a ban on LGBTQ materials in schools, and they cited a case that has something to do with me a little bit. They cited the 1989 case of Hazelwood School District versus Coalmire. That was the case, Tim, where the school newspaper wrote a story that the principal of the school and the school board didn't particularly care for. And Coalmire said that he had First Amendment rights, and the Supreme Court ruled that, no, you don't. You are a school newspaper.
Ah, very interesting. You are under the auspices of the folks who run the school. You are not independent journalists, apparently. Interesting indeed. The birthright citizenship debate, of course, rages on while the Supreme Court, I almost sneezed. While the Supreme Court, I did sneeze. The allergies are killing me today. Spring has sprung. While the Supreme Court considers the birthright citizenship case, I saw that Zack Smith did some reporting of his own. He put a little video up on something called, he was on Florida's Voice, and he was doing an interview on that, and so he's been doing a lot of interviews on what John Sauer, Missourian, argued before the Supreme Court last week.
Good to hear from Zack on about that at 425.
At 445, we'll have Chris's Corner.
Yeah, the homeless industrial complex. I'll tell you how the homeless has turned into an industry, and I'll tell you more about that at 445 on Chris's Corner.
Speaker Stump speech. Yes, I'm going to ask the question and give some rhetorical answers to who do you want to believe? Who do you want to believe? While the world waits with bated breath to see what occurs in the Middle East, you often wonder, who are the media and the left rooting for? And are you going to take what they say as gospel truth, or are you going to believe America's elected leaders? Who do you want to believe at 507, the Speaker's Stump speech? Life, the right to life, 525. We will examine that topic with Nick Johnson, St. Louis Market Director at the Vitae Foundation. Our good friends at Vitae Foundation are having their annual pro-life dinner just around the corner, 6 days away on April the 14th at the Frontenac Hilton. Their keynote speaker will be Brandon Tatum, TPUSA contributor and Blexit co-founder. He'll be the featured guest and speaker at this year's Vitae Foundation. We'll talk to Nick Johnson about the dinner. We'll talk to him about what Vitae does, the great work they do, and the fight for life that will occur here later in the year in the state of Missouri as the new Amendment 3 will be back on the ballot. And what are we going to talk about from the stack of stuff at 545?
No free buses in New York City, at least not yet. The Mayor Mondami announced that yesterday. I'll have details on that at the end of the show.
Yeah, I saw a piece of Mondami. He's kind of echoing Hochul. He was basically begging people to not flee New York. He was begging the wealthy not to leave New York, to stay, something that Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, mentioned a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Mondami realizing you can't just create a socialist utopia if you have no one to fund it.
Yeah, you need rich people to pay for free buses and free subway tokens and all of the other liberal stuff that he wants to do.
Yes, you do indeed. What else we got going on today around the world?
Election Day was
Election
yesterday.
Day, yes. We had local elections. Real mixed bag, and unfortunately, really low turnout.
Well, I got to tell you, for local city council members, it was an absolute bloodbath. 4 Festus council members lost their seats yesterday, and you remember the big controversy out there was data centers. And out in O'Fallon, 3 incumbent members lost their seats. One of those was, of course, our good friend Linda Ragsdale, who lost by 34 votes.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Yes. You hate those close votes like that.
So what was this election about? Voting no on everything? Because what was weird was there were tax increases that got voted down yesterday across the state. There were things that were at least pictured as tax decreases that were voting down, and a lot of incumbents got tossed out. It's almost as if the voters are just aggravated, and they went to the polls and they voted no on everything, and they threw most of the incumbents out of office.
Yeah, I think the data center issue, of course, was a big part of a lot of that. You know, data centers are proliferating all around the St. Louis area, and the residents are not happy about those. I think they feel that their voices are not being heard when the council is approving these, and they show up at these city council meetings en masse and tell them they don't want them, and they voted with their feet yesterday on that election. And then we have the election in Georgia, of course, to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. The left is counting this as a great victory because the Republican only won by 12 points when that was a district that President Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene carried by 30 points. So because that margin was cut in half, they're claiming that is a victory. But I think, once again, as you've said many times, Tim, in these special elections, the turnout is not great. So I don't think the Democrats can really claim much of a victory here.
Yeah, it's going to be most likely a very different world in November of 2026. Look, I know many of us feel like 2026 just started. It's now the second quarter of the year. April, the fourth month of the year. November, the 11th month. So we've got quite a few more months. We've got half the year to tick by. And 6 months from now, if we're still embroiled in conflict in the Middle East and gas prices are still high and the stock market is still kind of staggering along, people are not going to be happy with any of the incumbents in office. Yep. If the opposite is true, if there is no more U.S. involvement in Middle East conflicts by this November and gas prices are back down and people are feeling good about their security and their safety and their pocketbooks, the Republicans could buck the tide. It's all going to depend on what voters feel. As we know, we live and breathe this, and we thank our listeners for listening to this every day, but there's a big chunk of Americans who don't live and die on politics and public policy. They make their minds up, some of them, as they're walking into the ballot box.
Mm-hmm. Another big election that the nation was watching yesterday was the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The liberals were able to obtain another seat, so they have a 5-2 majority on that particular court. They're going to have that majority at least till 2030. And a lot of the nation looks at Wisconsin because they are a border state, and the Wisconsin Supreme Court has ruled on a lot of important social issues that affect the country. So kind of mixed bag there. Won in Georgia, but lost that seat in the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Yeah, Wisconsin is a funky state, a very purple state. And they are going to be one of those battlegrounds that we'll be watching come November. Remember, News Talk STL, your one-stop shop for all your election news. We will be covering everything as we head towards August. And speaking of that, Chris, we've got some huge events coming up right around the corner, including the Road to Zero Income Tax Town Hall, which will be Thursday, April the 30th at the Lodge of DePero. Mike Ferguson will be moderating that, along with he'll be joined by Senator Nick Schroer and Representative Ben Keithley talking about that Road to Zero. We are very happy to be host sponsors of that, along with AFP Missouri and Mo Tax Relief Now. And then on Tuesday, June 2nd, we're going to have a debate at Lindenwood University featuring the 3 St. Charles County executive candidates, Jason Law, Bill Eigel, and the incumbent, Steve Ellman. That'll be Tuesday, June 2nd. All of that information and more is at newstalkstl.com. We've always got a lot of great stuff for you, all you out there to participate in. We hope you join us at all of our upcoming events and opportunities. It is 4:22 in the p.m. As we mentioned, we got a ton of legal lawfare stuff to talk about with Zack Smith, all kinds of stories from the Supreme Court down to the state level. We will talk to our resident legal eagle next on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show at 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Or a fortress strong with chains upon my feet.
Dropping truth bombs and making you think. It's the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
I will never be set free as long as I'm a ghost you can't see.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. The warming trend continues for Thursday. Mostly sunny to partly cloudy and 57 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon with a little breeze out of the southwest. A nice warm day. Friday, cloudy skies, though, some scattered showers, isolated thunder, but mostly showers on and off from the late morning on into the evening. Doesn't rain that whole time, but there'll be some scattered rain in the region during the day with a high of 71 degrees. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Hey everyone, it's Todd Showalter with my buddy Joey V. Be sure to join me and Joey for the Right Mind Show, where we put the fun in our dysfunctional world. Saturdays at 5, right here at 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Spring has sprung, and along with it, spring storms. If you're concerned about any of the damage your roof might have potentially received, I would urge you to listen carefully and closely right now. I'm going to tell you all about a great new roofing company that recently joined our station and our show this year, and that would be Correll Roofing Company. They're at CorrellRoofingCo.com, CORRELL, CorrellRoofingCo.com. Why would you call anyone else other than this local, independently owned, family-owned roofing company? They're not storm chasers. They're not going anywhere. And you know what that means? They'll be with you from the very beginning of the process till well after things are wrapped up, in case you have anything that needs to be tended to after the fact. Curtis Correll, more than 20-plus years of experience in the roofing business. He is the founder of this awesome new family venture, and they'll advocate for you from start to finish with your insurance company. They won't work. They're not going to sit there and just, argue with them for argument's sake. They're going to make sure you get the best deal possible and that they cover as much as you are owed. If you want peace of mind, have Correll Roofing Company come out. Check out your roof this week. Do you know what you're looking for when you're looking at a roof? I don't. I try to be a relatively handy person, but in today's rapidly advancing technologies of roofing shingles, I would rather have an expert up on my roof. Number one, I'm not going to get up on my roof, but I'd rather have an expert checking it out versus me trying to eyeball it. Go to Correll Roofing Company. Go to CorrellRoofingCo.com. See all the great things that this great locally owned, independently owned, family-owned company can do for you, your family, and your roof. Schedule your appointment today with Correll Roofing Co. They're at CorrellRoofingCo.com, CorrellRoofingCo.com.
It's not pleasant to hear it, but Missouri is falling behind in its spending of state tax dollars, education, and health care. But there are ways to get Missouri moving forward again and produce a better life for all of us. That's why we at the Show Me Institute put together a 2026 Missouri Blueprint, a roadmap on how the state can move to a brighter future. The blueprint covers policy ideas from taxes to government transparency, from education to healthcare and budget reform. Let's allow students to attend the school of their choice. Let's adopt new proven methods to help the many school kids who can barely read. Let's limit state spending growth for Missouri's long-term financial stability. And let's invest in future needs with more nuclear energy. Why not common sense reforms to make things better for all Missourians? Check out our 2026 Missouri Blueprint, moving Missouri forward at showmeinstitute.org. The Show Me Minute has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
A Disney cruise is no ordinary vacation. It's an adventure, a fairy tale, a dream. Step aboard and discover where favorite Disney characters meet fun for the whole family, where total rest and relaxation meet the ultimate escape and excitement, where a dream vacation meets a magical cruise. Only on Disney Cruise Line, where magic meets the sea.
Magic Expeditions will make planning your Disney cruise easy. Reach out at magicexpeditions.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name. If you come around here, I'll make them all day. I get one down in a second if you wait.
NBC News projects that the Democratic aligned candidate, Chris Taylor, has been elected to the state Supreme Court. This does represent a flip of a seat on that court. This is a seat held by outgoing Republican-aligned Justice Rebecca Bradley, meaning in terms of the politics of the court in Wisconsin, this now gives the Democrats, with this victory, a 2-seat majority on that Wisconsin Supreme Court. That means, the way these elections are scheduled, their majority is now safe until at least the year 2030.
Oh, it's all perfectly legal. You are out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order.
Zack Smith, legal fellow with the Heritage Foundation.
You know, I ask you a lot of predictions. Can you predict what the Supreme Court probably will do with this action? And now, with all his predictions for today, Zack Smith, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Of course. Zach, the Supreme Court's infamous docket is going to hear a case next week, and it's regarding an election dispute in Ohio. The Secretary of State there in Ohio wants to leave off a Republican candidate because they don't think he's a Republican. He said back in 2017 that he has a strategy of turning to Democrats as Republicans, running as Democrats as Republicans in deeply red districts. Is that enough to keep him off the ballot?
Well, Chris, a lot of these contested issues are going to come up over the next several weeks and months, particularly as we get closer to the midterm elections. You're seeing a lot of aggressive enforcement actions by state SGs, AGs, secretaries of states. So I haven't looked at this particular case very closely, but I suspect you'll see more of this type of litigation going forward. And the other thing I'll say, Chris, I suspect one area you may see in particular over the next several years relates to ballot initiatives. Have the standards been met for certain ballot initiative measures to go before the voters? In my home state of Florida, that often comes up in terms of we have a ballot summary on the ballot, not the actual language of the amendment. And so there's a real question whether the ballot summary actually reflects the language of the amendment itself and what that language will accomplish. And so you'll see that type of back and forth, I suspect, playing out in the courts over the next several years.
Zach, there was a case that popped up today whereby a group of Catholic nuns have filed suit. I believe they just filed this lawsuit on Monday, so it's very, very fresh. But it's kind of a case, Zach. I feel like we've seen this case before. They're suing over, I guess, nursing homes that they oversee are being forced to provide same-sex bathrooms and transgender care and all sorts of very seemingly, Zach, obvious violations of their First Amendment rights to religious freedom.
Yeah, that's right, Tim. So this is, if we're thinking of the same lawsuit, it's a group of nuns out of New York that essentially they're challenging New York's LGBTQ long-term care facility residents Bill of Rights. And
Yes.
the nuns are saying that it infringes on their First Amendment because essentially it requires long-term care facilities. These facilities cannot refuse a transgender resident's request to be assigned to a room or be allowed to use a restroom that aligns with that resident's gender identity. Now, obviously, this would cause these Catholic care facilities to have to violate their own religious beliefs, their own religious teachings. And as you mentioned, Tim, we've seen this in a number of other areas as well. In terms of whether a photographer, that was the case before the Supreme Court, would have to provide services to same-sex couples, even if she had a deeply held belief that she could not, that she believed that marriage was between one man and one woman, so wouldn't provide her services to be part of ceremonies that would cause her to violate her own religious beliefs. So, look, I think the nuns in this case have a very compelling argument that this law requires them to violate the First Amendment. And sadly, if the nuns lose this lawsuit, what will end up happening is they'll probably have to stop providing care in the state of New York. We saw that happen in the city of Philadelphia when the city of Philadelphia said they would no longer certify Catholic social services to provide adoption services, to be an adoption provider for the city because of Philadelphia's and Pennsylvania's efforts to force them to place children with same-sex couples, even though that violates Catholic social services teachings. And so we'll have to wait and see how this lawsuit plays out. I think the nuns have a good chance of succeeding on the merits, even if they may lose in the district court or the Court of Appeals. I suspect if this case makes its way to the U.S. Supreme Court, I don't make predictions, but it seems like they have a very compelling case, a very strong likelihood of succeeding. And I think it's unfortunate that New York officials are essentially putting nuns in this no-win situation, be forced to violate their rights of conscience or stop providing services unless this law is struck down as unconstitutional.
Speaking with Zack Smith, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Zach, last week, Steve Bannon won a Supreme Court order that will likely lead to to the dismissal of contempt of Congress conviction that he received. Give us the details on that court order.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I looked at it very briefly, Chris, but if I'm recalling correctly, and I could be recalling incorrectly,
You're never
I
wrong,
think the
Zach.
my wife might disagree with you on that, but I'll take it. I'll take it. But essentially, because the DOJ is seeking to dismiss this case, or essentially they're agreeing with Steve Bannon in his position, the Supreme Court essentially has said, let that lower court proceedings play out, and there may not be a need for the court to intervene, essentially. And so I think we'll wait and see what happens. But keep in mind, Chris, President Trump has already granted pardons to many individuals who were prosecuted as a result of their involvement in his campaign in the lead up to 2020 or after 2020. He's commuted the sentences for other individuals. What I think we have to be on the lookout for going forward is efforts by state officials to continue those prosecutions. You're seeing that in Arizona, you're seeing that in Georgia, a few other places as well. And then we've talked about it before, but the bar associations going after government officials or lawyers that represented President Trump, zealously represented him, and took not frivolous, but controversial positions in some cases. You're seeing the California State Bar still undertaking efforts to disbar some of President Trump's attorneys. You're seeing the D.C. Bar routinely engaged in this type of barfare. Now we're hearing rumblings that there may be a bar complaint filed against Attorney General Pam Bondi in Florida, forcing her to defend some of her actions as U.S. Attorney General. And so this is a very real issue that has gotten some attention, but unfortunately hasn't gotten all of the attention that it deserves.
Yeah, Zach, the left, the Democrats, I don't think a day goes by where they haven't telegraphed their intentions in open, broad daylight as to how much they are going to weaponize government if they get control of the U.S. House next year. And it seems like from what you just said right there, a lot of this is already bubbling up in various states as well. Zach, for a party that cries every single day, and their leftist commentators join in the chorus about Donald Trump's DOJ, I guess for them, Zach, it's okay if they do it, but it's not okay if folks on the right do it. I guess hypocrisy knows no bounds, huh?
Well, I guess not, Tim. It reminds me of the old saying, everything for my friends, for my enemies, it's the law. That seems to be the refrain that we've heard from so many on the left over the past few years. And look, I think, it goes back to what's happening in other institutions as well. And I think it ties into that opening clip we heard about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. And this is going to have implications that I don't think a lot of people have fully appreciated yet, because obviously control of state Supreme Courts is going to matter a lot during the next several election cycles, particularly during the presidential election. We've already seen a lot of left-leaning election lawyers. Mark Elias is a very infamous one in particular, moving a lot of litigation into state courts, trying to bring suits under state constitutions when they haven't succeeded under the U.S. Constitution or federal voting rights or civil rights related statutes. So obviously control of state courts are going to matter for that, but control of state courts also matters because guess who controls the bar associations, the bar investigations in most states? It's going to be state Supreme Courts. Guess who controls the rules and regulations governing court procedures in many states? It's state Supreme Courts. And we've already seen some states like Michigan, for example. Michigan has recently had their Supreme Court flip from having a slight conservative majority to now having a liberal majority or non-originalist majority. And guess what Michigan has done, Tim? They have pushed out rules and regulations. They've called for a wholesale reevaluation of the rules governing procedures, civil procedure, criminal procedure, appellate procedure in their courts to be reevaluated and revised in light of DEI principles. In order to become a chief judge in one of Michigan's lower courts, you now have to certify to the Michigan Supreme Court how you have implemented DEI practices in your courtroom and in your role as a trial judge in the state of Michigan. And so I suspect you'll continue to see more of those types of policies as more courts, unfortunately, look like they have flipped recently from having conservative or certainly center left or center right majorities to having much more radical majorities in power.
Zach, the Department of Justice has concluded that a federal law that says presidential records belong to the U.S. government is unconstitutional. Can you give us the reasonings the Justice Department is using to come to that conclusion?
Well, I think Richard Nixon would like a word, Chris, because obviously this was a big issue post-Watergate about who controlled access to the records, and actually some of the current laws we have on the books were passed in the wake of Watergate and President Nixon's assertion that he owned the records, not the government of the United States. Now, I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive on this opinion. This was put out by the Office of Legal Counsel. That's typically considered to be the constitutional lawyers, kind of the brain trust in the Justice Department. So I'll be anxious to dive into that a little bit, wade through the reasoning. But again, I suspect this is going to be a hotly contested issue going forward after presidential administrations, because obviously after President Trump's first administration, control over certain documents, who owned them, who could take them where. Obviously, that was the basis for some of the lawfare we saw against President Trump and those associated with him.
Zach, I noticed on your Twitter X feed, TZ Smith, that you did quite a bit of additional pontificating on last week's historic Supreme Court arguments regarding the birthright citizenship case. And I noticed one of the things that you were keying in on as the dust was kind of settling and maybe thoughts were congealing on that was you mentioned in some of your interviews that you believe that the case might turn on the definition and the meaning of the word allegiance, as in where is your allegiance and to what country? You're supposed to have allegiance to one country. Zach, do you think that they explain how the justices might make a decision turned on that singular word? And do you think, therefore, it will be a narrow ruling versus a more expansive one?
Well, Tim, I thought you were going to comment on my tweeting about my love for Waffle House.
That too.
How the Artemis astronauts, no one's ever been further from a Waffle House than they have, and that's the real distance we should be measuring here. And I hope they get their hash browns smothered and covered when they get back to Earth. But look, this birthright citizenship case, obviously, as we've talked about before, it's going to have vast implications. It's going to turn on the technical reading of the 14th Amendment, the phrase subject to the jurisdiction. What does it mean to be subject to the jurisdiction of a country, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? We obviously saw Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson trying to make a somewhat simplistic argument, I think, saying that if you're in a country, you're subject to its jurisdiction because you have to follow the laws. But as John Sauer very deftly explained, that phrase has a very technical meaning. It would have been understood to convey a very particular thing to the readers of that phrase at the time it was ratified and adopted. And to your point, essentially what the government is arguing, essentially what John Sauer argued, is that subject to the jurisdiction essentially meant that you owed your allegiance to the United States, that you had renounced allegiance to other countries, that you were here in the United States, and you planned to be a part of our political community, either as a citizen or towards a path to citizenship or as a permanent resident. You'd renounced allegiance to other foreign potentates or countries, and that you essentially planned to be an American. So we'll have to wait and see what the justices do. There is a potential the justices could try to take a slight out and decide the case on statutory grounds. There's also a statutory claim in this case. The challengers have alleged it violates a statute that Congress passed that uses almost identical language as the 14th Amendment. So we'll have to wait and see what the justices do. But obviously, as we've talked about before, this case is a very important one that will be consequential no matter what the justices decide.
And finally, Zach, the Eighth Circuit has allowed Iowa to enforce their school book ban. The circuit court cited the U.S. Supreme Court's 1988 decision in Hazelwood School District versus Kohlmeyer. And just a note, Zach, I am a Hazelwood School District graduate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, excellent. Well, it's certainly, look, this is book bans, book challenges, obviously are very controversial. They've been implemented around the country. But I think what's clear, Chris, is that school districts have to have some ability to curate the curriculum about what is presented to students. It's not an open forum. Everyone isn't free to go into school libraries, to classrooms, and present their views with equal time giving to everyone. Schools essentially have to have the ability to do that. And typically, What schools say, with some force, I think, is that they are engaging in government speeches, the government presenting its own views on certain topics, which typically doesn't receive the same First Amendment level of scrutiny that we typically think about. I suspect there'll be more challenges to this, but again, from a practical level, what stood out to me, Chris, when something similar was challenged in Florida, the governor held a press conference and simply began reading some of the books that he had supposedly banned from schools. And guess what happened, Chris? The local news coverage had to cut the live feed of the press conference because the books were so graphic and so inappropriate.
That's Zack Smith, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org, and on X, TZ Smith. Zack, thank you as always, and we'll speak with you next week.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. Take care.
No problem. Joy, if I'm not mistaken, you are a Hazelwood School District graduate as well, right?
Yeah, they taught us a little bit about
Did
that ruling and how you better watch your P's and Q's if you're on the yearbook or the newspaper.
All right. 444. When we come back, we'll have Chris's Corner, and the Chris's Corner is the homeless industrial complex. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL.
Everyone's a winner, we're making our fame. Bonafide hustler, making my name. Sometimes I think sitting on trains. Every step I get, I'm clocking that game.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. The warming trend continues for Thursday. Mostly sunny to partly cloudy and 57 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon, with a little breeze out of the southwest. A nice warm day. Friday, cloudy skies, though, some scattered showers, isolated thunder, but mostly showers on and off from the late morning on into the evening. Doesn't rain that whole time, but there'll be some scattered rain in the region during the day with a high of 71 degrees. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
If you have a phone, you have a radio. Download the all-new News Talk STL app.
Love the all-new app.
And listen anytime, anywhere.
My wonderful wife, Becky, and I recently discovered a place that has quickly become one of our new favorite restaurants, and I've got to tell you how we found it. Royal Bank CEO Mitch Baden actually introduced me to Timothy's. He took me there to lunch a few weeks back, and after that first visit, Becky and I went back together, and now it's one of our favorite places to go. If you haven't been yet, you need to check it out. The atmosphere and ambience are terrific. It's one of those places where you can relax, enjoy a great meal, and just slow down for a while. Becky absolutely loved the lobster pot pie, and I loved the steak tip pasta. Everything we've tried has been outstanding. Timothy's is led by executive chef Will Mabry and features contemporary American cuisine with a touch of Southern charm. Dishes like pastrami smoked lamb, shrimp and grits, and incredible house-made desserts like carrot cake fritters with cream icing. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. And if you're a wine lover like my wife, you'll appreciate this. They have over 500 wines to choose from. Timothy's is open 7 nights a week for dinner, plus lunch and brunch, and it's also a great place if you're planning a private event or a gathering. Check them out at Timothy's, 12710 Olive Boulevard in the Belle Reve Plaza in Creve Coeur, or online at timothystl.com. And when you get there, tell them Chris Arps sent you.
Hey, Jamie Allman here for my favorite go-to store for seafood, gourmet goodness, and tons of wine. It's Stars, 1135 South Big Bend. A huge selection of seafood flown in from the coast. Lemon sole, halibut, Maryland lump crab, Gulf shrimp, and you gotta try the trout dip. Plus, imported and domestic hand-cut cheeses, lots of hand-picked wines at great prices, hard-to-find gourmet foods, and fresh roasted coffee using only the best quality beans. Stars, 1135 South Big Bend, just off of Highway 40.
If you're considering an annuity as part of your retirement plan, we need to talk. Hi, I'm Bob Stockdale, Senior Vice President Investments with the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel, and host of On the Money Saturday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL 1019. Annuities can be a useful tool for some retirement investors, but not all annuities are created equal. Every week, we meet clients who own complex annuities that don't suit their needs and, in some cases, actively undermine their retirement plan. Before you purchase an annuity, get a second opinion from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. Requesting a consultation is free of charge. To request a free consultation, contact us at clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call us at 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com or 636-695-2650. Stiefel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member NYSE and SIPC.
On the next Larry Connors USA.
The story behind the story. When I was first in broadcasting, trying to get a sponsor, should have been easy, but was very hard.
Larry Connors USA. Now weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL. Chris's Corner, brought to you by STL Windows and Doors, locally owned and operated in Earth City. Tim Jones and Chris Arps, driving the leftist crazy all afternoon.
Here at the Concord Apartments, you can see belongings scattered outside, everything from children's toys to furniture, after dozens were forced out of their homes, and now tenants say they did not see this coming. Last Thursday, a massive police operation shut down this South St. Louis apartment complex after the city of St. Louis says it had already been condemned in February. Police issued 63 summonses and made 13 arrests, calling the property a hub for crime, recovering guns, drugs, and even a modified AR-15.
Chris.
And if you don't know, now you know.
And now, Chris's Corner.
Let me give you a number that should stop you in your tracks. New York City is now spending over $81,000 per homeless person per year. Think about that for a second. That is more than many working families earn an entire year to take care of one homeless individual. And yet the homeless problem in New York is getting worse, not better. So naturally, we should ask a very basic question. Where is the money going? Because according to the New York State Comptroller, they can't even fully track the effectiveness of the spending because the city's Department of Homeless Services does not clearly report how the money's being spent. And auditors have already flagged governance problems with nonprofit shelter providers. In other words, we're spending massive amounts of taxpayer money, and no one can clearly explain whether any of it is actually solving the problem. And this is where conservatives have been right for a long time. The problem isn't that America doesn't spend enough money on social programs. The problem is that we spend money with no accountability, no metrics, and no expectation of results. At some point, you have to ask whether we're really trying to solve homelessness or whether we've created what some people call a homeless industrial complex, where nonprofits, bureaucracies, and contractors all get paid, whether the problem gets better or not. Because if you're spending $81,000 per person, and projections say it could reach $97,000 per person, and the number of homeless people is still rising, that's not compassion, that's not success. That's government failure. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If a private company spent $81,000 per customer and the problem got worse every year, that company would go out of business. But in government, failure doesn't mean you lose funding. Failure means you get a bigger budget next year. That's backwards. Real compassion isn't measured by how much money you spend. Real compassion is measured by whether you actually help people get off the streets, get the treatment they need, get job training, and become self-sufficient again. Throwing money at a problem with no accountability isn't compassion. It's negligence with a press release. And until we start measuring success by outcomes instead of how much we spend, these problems are not going to get better. They're going to get more expensive. And the taxpayers and the people who are actually stuck out on the streets are the ones paying the price. And that is Chris's Corner. $81,000 per homeless person, and we've seen the problem get worse, but Mondami has a plan for it. Tax the rich.
Next time anyone asks me to prove waste and fraud in government, I'm going to cite them to that statistic that you just said, because every time, Chris, the government gets involved in something, it commits waste and abuse. Not always fraud, but it commits waste and abuse.
Yeah.
Things always cost more and a lot more. And here's an easy stat for people to keep in mind that I have heard a multitude of times recently over the last few years. Florida now has more people, has a greater population than New York. It has leapfrogged New York. New York's budget spends twice as much on government as Florida's does. Do people think that New York's schools are twice as good, their roads twice as smooth or better? No, in fact, many people would say that government operates twice as better in Florida with half the budget. They just spend their money more wisely and obviously have greater accountability.
And unfortunately, with the liberal mindset when it comes to these types of issues is that even though you don't see any results from all the money that's being spent, they'll counter and say we're not spending enough
not
money.
enough.
That's why the problem is not being solved. That's what we also call liberal logic.
Yes, and it is empirically disproven these days with the advent of, there's a lot of things about technology to be cautious about. There's a lot of things about technology to celebrate. And one of the biggest things we can celebrate, the access we normal human beings have to information, Chris, that used to be buried in government tomes and treatises and Excel spreadsheets is now available at the touch of a finger. People can look at the tax rates in different states. They can look at the government spending in different states. They can compare these things. And I'm sorry, folks, to all our lovely liberal listeners out there, we know you're hanging on our every word because we see you in some of our comments on our Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds and such and so forth. It is obvious that the red states right now have a much better cost of living and are providing better services at a better price than pretty much all of the big blue states.
And we do know that a lot of the homeless, they suffer from alcohol abuse, drug abuse, schizophrenia. I bring that up because there's breaking news here that DeCarlos Brown Jr., he was the man accused of stabbing 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee Erna Zariska in an unprovoked attack. He has been deemed incompetent to stand trial because he has schizophrenia. It was known that he had that before, but was out on the streets, and because of that, he was able to commit this horrendous murder. So he won't be held accountable for that because of his mental illness. But you can make the argument that he shouldn't have been out on the streets in the first place, and this 23-year-old young woman should still be alive. Jamie Allman talked about this story last week that in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, a gay bar was trying to do a mural of this young woman, and the mayor of Charlotte had them stop it because it was not politically correct. Even though this is a gay bar, you would think that they would tend to be on the liberal side. All they did was want to honor this woman, and the liberals found fault with that.
I thought liberals loved Ukraine these days and celebrated the Ukrainians. Apparently not this particular Ukrainian who was stabbed in cold blood.
Sad story there. Okay, 507, we'll have the Speaker Stump Speech.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the fact that some folks on the left in the media and the TDS deranged, they don't know who or what to believe, and they seem to make it up on the fly. The Orwellian doublespeak of the lunatic left.
And then at 523, we'll speak with Nick Johnson. He's the St. Louis Market Director at the Vitae Foundation. We'll speak with him about their pro-life dinner that's going to be on April 14th at the Frontenac Hilton. Their featured keynote speaker is Brandon Tatum. You all know him from Blexit. He's a co-founder with Candace Owens, and he is also a TP USA contributor. We'll speak with Nick Johnson at 523 about that great organization and that great event. And at the end of the show, no free buses in New York City, at least not yet. Mayor Mondami seems to be running up to budget constraints, Tim.
Well, I thought money grows on grows on trees in New York, according to Zoran. Chris, he's been in office now. If this was a Republican, the media would be attacking him every day, asking him when he's going to fulfill his campaign promises, since he's been in office now for all of about 4 months.
Yeah, and we've talked on this a little bit that California could make some news here coming up. They have the jungle primary out there. They've got a governor's race coming up. 2 Republicans are leading in the jungle primary. One of those Republicans, President Trump, has endorsed. And the liberals, they are frantically trying to figure something out, trying to get some of these people out of this race. Because can you imagine the political earthquake if a Republican is elected governor of California, a candidate that was endorsed by President Trump?
Is this an example of live by the sword, die by the sword? So, you create all these crazy election rules, and then all of a sudden, Chris, the chickens come home to roost.
Come back to bite you. All right, you're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL, number 1 for live and local conservative talk.
This
hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Looking for unbelievable deals? Stop by Overstock Outlet in Lake St. Louis or Warrenton. Open 7 days a week. Discover big savings on a huge variety of merchandise with no hassle. Just great prices. Visit us in Lake St. Louis on Highway N or in Warrenton on Boones Lake. Check out our Facebook page at Overstock Outlet Lake St. Louis. Or go online to OverstockOutletSTL.com. Unbeatable value, friendly service, and you never know what we'll have at Overstock Outlet.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at INHSTL.com. That's INHSTL.com.
Looking for a great place to play golf and host your next event? Sugar Creek Golf Course in High Ridge is more than just exceptional golf. Our clubhouse is the perfect spot for private parties, family get-togethers, and unforgettable celebrations. Make your special day even better with our welcoming atmosphere and outstanding service. Visit sugarcreekgolfcourse.com for more information. That's sugarcreekgolfcourse.com, where great golf and great memories meet. sugarcreekgolfcourse.com.
Producer Joey V from the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show here, reminding you, don't waste a buck on movies that suck. Tune in to Joey V's Movies Fridays at 5:45 for reviews you can trust. Brought to you by Harry J's Steakhouse in Moscow Mills.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefontaine, KNBS Bowling Green.
This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The U.S. and Iran will hold peace talks this weekend aimed at finding a permanent end to the war. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
With a 2-week ceasefire underway, the United States will participate in peace negotiations in Pakistan.
The president is dispatching his negotiating team, led by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Vance will lead the delegation, which includes Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Greg Clugston, the White House.
U.S. lawmakers greet the news of a ceasefire with relief and more questions. Details from correspondent Bernie Bennett.
President Trump's announcement Tuesday night of a ceasefire between the United States and Iran received a bipartisan welcome in Congress, but Democrats continue to raise questions about the path forward after weeks of war without congressional authorization. House Speaker Mike Johnson reposted the president's social media message announcing the ceasefire Tuesday night without commenting on it. North Dakota Republican Senator Kevin Cramer called it an example of Mr. Trump's peace through strength approach. Bernie Bennett in Washington.
The California Supreme Court has ordered a Republican county sheriff who seized more than 500,000 2025 election ballots to pause his probe into election fraud allegations while the judges review the legal challenge against it. The order came after California Attorney General Rob Bonta, a Democrat, last month asked the court to step in. A voting rights group is also challenging the ballot seizure. The dispute started when Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco seized 1,000 boxes of election materials to investigate a complaint from a local citizens group about the ballot count from a November 2025 special election on redistricting. On Wall Street, the Dow by 1,325 points. More at townhall.com.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now.
800-583-0141.
Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-583-0141. That's 800-583-0141. Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. The warming trend continues for Thursday. Mostly sunny to partly cloudy and 57 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon, a little breeze out of the southwest. A nice warm day. Friday, cloudy skies, though, some scattered showers, isolated thunder, but mostly showers on and off from the late morning on into the evening. Doesn't rain that whole time, but there'll be some scattered rain in the region during the day with a high of 71 degrees. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
No paint, don't Rhino, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
Never paint again with Rhino Shield. Listen to what a couple of happy customers have to say.
My family's business is over 10,000 square feet, and it did not have the curb appeal I wanted. Our building was really faded. You came out, you gave me all of these options that would fit my building. I don't want to have to paint my building again. 25 years is a long time to not have to worry about the outside maintenance of your building as far as paint. That's a no-brainer. That's why Rhino Shield worked for me.
What a wonderful job they did. It's beautiful. They were very thoughtful, kind, considerate guys. Appreciate all the work that these two young men did.
Call Rhino Shield, 877-25-RHINO, 877-25-RHINO, or 877-25rhino.com. See what we did there? Genius. Tell them, ladies.
No paint, don't Rhino, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
News, analysis, opinion.
Don't always agree, but in love listening to your radio station.
This is tyrannical stuff they're doing.
Elections have consequences.
This is 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
I know that you're all celebrating lots of wonderful things this spring because don't we all have wonderful celebrations in spring? There are proms, there are weddings, there are birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, there are all kinds of wedding showers and baby showers and anniversaries. It seems like this time of year is a very busy one for all those celebratory items. Mom's Day, Mother's Day, literally right around the corner. Special people in your life deserve special things, and where you can get them without breaking the bank is at Newsteaders. Newsteaders Fine Jewelers. Fine jewelry does not mean expensive jewelry. Like I just said, you walk in with a budget, and Newsteaders will definitely help you remain within it. They want you to be happy long-term with your purchase and not ever regret anything. Newsteaders has been our neighborhood jewelry store in the St. Louis region since 1961. Multiple generations of the Newsteaders family still operating Newsteaders. That's why they haven't changed the name, because there's Newsteaders still there. Honest Jewelry Solutions for over 5 decades. They are open weekdays 10 a.m. to 5:30, Saturdays 10 to 3. They're right in the middle of the heart of St. Louis County, 2961 Daughtery Ferry Road, just 2 miles west of 270. 24/7, you can check out the Newsteaders site at wowdiamonds.com. They have everything. Yes, of course. Beautiful lab-grown and mined diamonds, wedding and engagement rings, hand-engraved items and watches and pendants and earrings and gemstones, and so much more. They do jewelry repair. They do appraisals, pearl and bead restringing, quality ring resizing. They want you to enjoy the jewelry you have for decades to come, and they can create legacy items for you as well. Newsteaders Fine Jewelers at wowdiamonds.com. That's Newsteaders Fine Jewelers at wowdiamonds.com.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now. They just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but
Now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here? As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
Caroline, will the U.S. take part in talks with Iran in Islamabad on Friday?
I can announce that the president is dispatching his negotiating team, led by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Witkoff, and Mr. Kushner to Islamabad for talks this weekend. The first round of those talks will take place on Saturday morning local time, and we look forward to those in-person meetings.
Well, there you have it. We don't exactly know what's going to happen next in the Middle East, but we do know that there's going to be some talks about what's going to be happening in the Middle East. Chris, I guess that's better than everybody continuing to throw bombs at one another.
Yeah, it is. And as you heard in that clip there, the president is dispatching his team there to Islamabad. We don't know if Iran is going to be at this meeting yet. They should, because, the president said he's going to release holy hell on them. It's an uneasy time in the world right now, and Iran has lied so many times over and over and over. So any deal that is struck there in those in-person negotiations, I hope they have it in writing and in blood and written down and taped and the whole nine.
They're going to have to, because Iran has never been a worthy confidant when it comes to keeping things that have been agreed to. Apparently, Pakistan were the ones that intervened here at the 12th hour and said, hey, please, let's not, no more obliteration of the region. And they intervened and got President Trump and the U.S. military to temporarily stand down. As was mentioned in the press conference today, none of the military assets are being removed from the region. Everything's just going to stay where it is on pause until, I guess, at least this first round of talks occurs.
And I think Pakistan, of course, one of their main motivations for this is the oil. They receive, like most of Asia, most of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran was allowing Pakistani ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz without being harmed. So they have an economic interest in this, most definitely, to try to end this conflict so they can get oil free flowing again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and you would think the rest of Europe would as well. I know that the Secretary General of NATO was meeting with the Trump administration as well. He's trying to preserve NATO, as Trump is not happy with most of the NATO nations. Not all the NATO nations. I learned today that several of the NATO nations have been incredibly complimentary to the U.S. and have assisted them quite a bit. Some of the former Baltic Soviet, they know, right? They know the dangers of communism and socialism and tyranny. Romania has been a huge ally, Poland and some others. But, of course, you have France and Spain as the outliers, and most recently the UK not being completely friendly and helpful throughout this.
Yeah, and you can throw Italy in there as well. They didn't allow flyover rights for our planes regarding this war with Iran. So a fraught time here in the world, and hopefully we can come to some type of agreement to stop the fighting on Saturday.
We will continue to monitor that. Tomorrow, on tomorrow's show, we'll speak with Steve Bucci, one of our favorite international policy experts. We have Jim Talent on Mondays, Steve Bucci on Thursdays. We got those beautiful bookends there. Steve will be able to analyze what the latest news is coming out of the Middle East. So you're not going to want to miss that tomorrow at 4:25. Give you a full update then. And you should listen to News Talk STL around the clock, because all of our programs have been featuring all sorts of excellent military experts from around the world. I know Larry Connors, Commander Connors, he'll be all over this evening as well. Of course, Larry, a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, and he brings unique insight to our discussions here at News Talk STL as well. Nick Johnson going to join us at 5:25. Did you know that there is a big dinner coming up just around the corner next week, the day before Tax Day? Boo! But this is a happy occasion. Tuesday, next Tuesday, April the 14th at the Frontenac Hilton will be the annual Vitae Foundation St. Louis Pro-Life Dinner. Chris, Vitae is an interesting organization. You don't hear about them necessarily on the front lines. They're a little quieter, but they do such important work on the back end of the life debate. They do a lot of research and development. They work on a lot of messaging. They're one of those organizations that's trying to change the culture around life and life choices.
Yeah, they're not so much focused on the political aspect of it. They're more focused on hearts and minds, and especially the hearts and minds of women that are potentially seeking abortions.
That's very true. And in our very politically polarized world, on just about every topic, abortion definitely being one of them, where you basically have essentially a 50-50 split in the country, a political solution is going to be much harder to achieve than if we can change kind of the culture around this. I think people have been fed a barrel of snake oil when it comes to abortion, right? Oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing. You'll feel fine. It'll be great. And we don't hear often on the news, especially about complications and the dangers and the regrets and things of that sort. To prove that point, some of the biggest pro-life advocates in our country were people who were once part of the abortion industry, and they've had a conversion, they've had an epiphany.
And what's helped hasten that malaise is because now, reports say that more than half of abortions now happen at home when women are taking these abortion pills. Pills are not necessarily going to clinics, so that kind of takes it out of the public atmosphere a little bit, and we're not talking about it as much, the horrors of it, but it's still terrible. Mifepristone, a drug, as Dr. Tobler said many times, is not a drug that you should be able to get over the counter or through mail order. It has very serious potential side effects of women bleeding to death. If you don't take it correctly, you could have other complications, maybe even make yourself sterile for the rest of your life. So that is the next big debate here in abortion, is eliminating these drugs. And our Senator, Mr. Hawley, has been adamant about trying to get the FDA to not approve these drugs.
Leading the charge on that battle as well. All right. Hey, without further ado, let's get into today's Speaker's Stump Speech.
Listen to me, listen to me.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
It's time for the Speaker's Stump Speech, sponsored by Hanson's Tree Service at hansonstree.com.
I got it.
Go ahead, Adam, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You talk about the bundles of cash. I mean, Trump lifted oil sanctions to the tune of $14 billion for Iran in the middle of this war. So I don't think that's a particularly consistent position.
Joe Biden allowed hundreds of billions of dollars to go to the Iranian regime. Give me a break, Adam. You are so full of it. It's embarrassing.
If I
it's
had
embarrassing.
It's embarrassing,
Adam.
I wouldn't let anybody else speak.
Congressman Mike Lawler there really taking it to Congressman Adam Smith, reminding him about the many different positions that Democrats and the left have had, mainly bad positions when it comes to dealing with the conflict in the Middle East, which didn't just happen overnight, didn't happen under the Trump administration, goes back decades. Many would argue it goes back thousands of years to the Holy Crusades. But in the modern day period, both Republicans and Democratic presidents have always said the same thing. Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terror, and we cannot allow them to have a nuclear weapon. Well, what does that mean? I mean, those words they sound very serious. They sound very forceful. Cannot, will not, shall not have, when spoken by a U.S. president, that should carry a lot of weight and action behind it. But for the most part, we haven't seen a lot of action taken. So much of what I've heard from the Democrats, the left, and the TDS, the Trump deranged syndrome sufferers over the last 24 hours reminds me so much of that famous novel that many of us read either in high school or college or both, George Orwell's 1984. It's funny that George Orwell wrote a book. In a way, it's almost semi-autobiographical, because the novel 1984 is a book of contradictions, right? It's mainly about a very dark dystopian future where nothing really means anything, or everything is defined by the totalitarian state. That's probably a more apt description. Orwell himself was a walking contradiction. Nobody more perfect could write a book about contradictions than Orwell. Orwell was largely known as a democratic socialist. However, he had libertarian tendencies as well. He hated authority. So kind of odd, right? He was a very anti-establishmentarianism kind of guy. He rejected, on one hand, Soviet-style communism because of its totalitarian aspects, but he also wasn't a big fan of free market capitalism either. He felt that free market capitalism empowered the creators so much more than the workers. I think he had that a little upside down and backwards, but let's just all agree that Orwell was a contradiction in terms himself. So maybe the perfect guy to write some of the most famous quotes that we take from 1984. And one of them in particular really hit my mind today because it's exactly what the media and the left and the hysterical Democrats and the TDS sufferers have been saying. They literally have been saying, because Donald Trump moves so fast, talks so fast, does so fast, they can't keep up with him, so they end up contradicting themselves. One of the famous lines from 1984 was, "War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength, defining words by their very opposite." That's pretty much what Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and so many of the D.C. Democrats have done over the last literal 24 hours. We started off the day yesterday where they said that Donald Trump obliterating Iran, and you got to remember, when Donald Trump says one thing, he's hoping to actually end up somewhere else. It's the art of the deal. Well, they want to take him literally so they can attack him literally. And so they declared that Donald Trump obliterating Iran would make him a warmonger and a war criminal and a heinous human being. And then, not even 24 hours later, the ceasefire deal is announced, and those same exact Democrats are saying, they're literally saying things, quotes of things like, "This ceasefire deal is horrible." So wait a minute. Do you want Iran obliterated, or do you want peace in the Middle East? They don't know. They just know that they hate Donald Trump, and they can't stand Republicans, and they want to beat them at the ballot box so they can, not solve the problems on their own because they don't have any solutions, but what they would really like to do is just regain power. So, who do you want to believe in this situation? Who do you want to take at their word? I know it's very difficult, given our very Orwellian world we live in, to actually believe anything is truth these days, but I think there's a couple truths that we can all agree because they've been said for the last many decades, and I think even Democrats and Republicans in D.C. might agree with them. Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terror. That is very provable. That has been defined. I think everybody agrees with that. Iran has also stated that it absolutely abhors the West. It calls the United States of America the great Satan. It calls Israel the little Satan. Well, what do you do with Satan? You want to destroy him, right? And so in their minds, they're leading what? A holy war. Why? Well, they're a theocracy. They're also Islamists. They want to commit the jihad. And they're more than happy to create terrorist attacks all around the world. Nobody disagrees with that either. The other axiom that people have largely, I think, agreed upon is that Iran should never have a nuclear weapon. Democrats have said that. Republicans have said that. European nations have said that. Non-European nations have said that. So then we come to this question. Do you believe that Iran would use a nuclear weapon if they could create one? And number two, do you believe that Iran was trying to create, the old regime was trying to create a nuclear weapon? You don't have to take the U.S. or Israel's word for it. There have been plenty of reports from the United Nations and from other peacekeeping operations who have nothing to do with the U.S., who have declared that, yes, Iran has been trying to enrich uranium. Why would Iran be wanting to enrich uranium up to weapons grade level while developing an ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Program? Probably because of everything else I just said, that they hate the West. They believe that the United States is the great Satan. Israel is the little Satan. They are a theocracy. They will not rest until everyone is subjected to the jihad. So that brings us to the next point. The next question, should we do anything about it? Should the leader of the free world, the United States of America, do anything about it? Or should we just sit back and wait? Do we believe Iran that they want the right, as they've said, to enrich uranium? Do we believe Iran that they want to create nuclear weapons, that they want to destroy the West? Or do we just sit back and wait for that moment to happen? Boy, if we did that and we were wrong, then we might not be on this radio station any longer, and basically all of Western civilization may absolutely collapse. So who are you going to believe? Who are you going to take at their word? Are you going to take the leaders of the United States government, no matter who they might be, Republican or Democrat, or are you going to continue to believe the jihadist theocracy, the world's largest state sponsor of terror, Iran? I'd rather believe the former and continue to distrust the latter. And that's the stump speech for today.
I just hate that we agreed to Iran's 10-point plan to end this peace deal, and then the next day they're reneging on it. I mean, and the president kind of backed himself in a corner a little bit by his saying that he's going to destroy their civilization. But I think at this point, after they are not following the deal, he's going to have to follow through with what he said. And as a lot of folks are saying today, finish the job.
Yeah, Hegseth addressed that. He said there was a fake 10-point plan circulating on the internet, and then there was a 15-point plan, and then there was another 10-point plan. And he said that they're going to iron this all out in the negotiations this weekend on Saturday. So I think we have to be very cautious in believing what Iran says about anything.
But meanwhile, they're still firing missiles into Israel, and they're firing missiles into their neighbors' countries, and they've shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
Levitt said the strait is not closed. She said that's what the Iranians reported. So I don't know if there's any other independent sources on that.
Well, Newsmax is reporting that it's shut.
Yeah, well, the White House is saying it's not. So you can believe, I guess you can disbelieve the White House if you want. Hegseth also said war's messy, and when you declare a ceasefire, everybody doesn't immediately turn their missiles off. It takes a while. So I don't know where we go from here, but I think the fact that they're having discussions on Saturday means that people want to talk about ending the conflict. So I'm with the White House on this one.
All right.
All right, we're going to go to a break now and come back with Nick Johnson, St. Louis Market Director at the Vitae Foundation. We're going to talk about life, the quest for life, and why Brandon Tatum is coming to St. Louis to promote that. All of that next with Nick Johnson of Vitae on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 101.9, 94.1, News Talk STL.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. The warming trend continues for Thursday. Mostly sunny to partly cloudy and 57 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon. A little breeze out of the southwest. A nice warm day. Friday, cloudy skies, though. Some scattered showers, isolated thunder, but mostly showers on and off from the late morning on into the evening. Doesn't rain that whole time, but there'll be some scattered rain in the region during the day with a high of 71 degrees. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
So many ways to listen to News Talk STL. Enable our Alexa skill.
Hello.
Hey, Alexa.
Yes, I'm listening.
Play News Talk STL.
Welcome to News Talk STL, conservative talk radio for St. Louis.
Let me tell you about a dental practice I don't just recommend. I am a proud patient. And if you've heard the show last week or a couple weeks ago, you know that we had Dr. Alan Link in studio with us. And what you hear on air is exactly what you get in person. He's knowledgeable, he's professional, and someone who truly cares about his patients. The Dental Link is run by Dr. Link and his son Andrew, and you can feel that family atmosphere the moment that you walk in. What really stood out to me is the staff. Dr. Link treats his team like family, and it shows. They're relaxed, professional, and they make you feel comfortable right away. Now, for me, this is personal. I have dental implants. This isn't cosmetic fluff. This is serious dental work, and they walked me through every step, made sure I was comfortable, and treated me like a person, not a procedure. And if you've been putting this off because you're nervous, listen to this. The Dental Link offers mini dental implants, a less invasive option with quicker recovery and less discomfort than traditional implants. I'm telling you, my implants have been a game changer. They look natural, they feel natural, and they gave me back confidence I didn't even realize I'd lost. The Dental Link is in Baldwin near 141 in Manchester. Give them a call today at 636-496-8584 or check them out at thedentallink.com, dentallink.com. Do good, do it well, have fun doing it. That's their motto.
What if your child's education went beyond test scores, fostering a life of cheerful virtue and the pursuit of excellence as a gift returned to God? At the St. Austin School, Catholic and classical education come together. No tablets or laptops in the classroom. A 12-to-1 student-teacher ratio. Our students successfully compete and lead at their choice of top high schools in St. Louis. Learn more at staustinschool.org. That's staustinschool.org.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-478-6430 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-478-6430. That's 800-478-6430. What do you have to lose? Call 800-478-6430. Again, 800-478-6430.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
I'm a space cowboy. Bet you weren't ready for that. I'm a space cowboy. I'm sure you know where it's at. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
It's an astronaut. They're going into space. You don't have to look at the color. You can look at the fact that if I do this, this, and that, I can make it there. Raise your kids right, and they will grow up and be like this man.
Young brown boys and girls can look at me and go, hey, he looks like me and he's doing what? And that's great. I love that. But I also hope we are pushing the other direction, that one day we don't have to talk about these first, that one day this is just, and I listen to this, that this is the human history. It's about human history. It's the story of humanity, not black history, not women's history, but that it becomes human history.
Let me tell you why I love everything he just said. See, he had a daddy in his life, or he had a mama and mentors that were in his life that helped him get to the point that he's at. It's not about color.
Brandon Tatum, was that Brandon Tatum commenting on the astronaut?
That's correct. There's a black astronaut up there and a Canadian astronaut, but there's mostly the black one is what he was talking about.
What a diverse space flight. That's fantastic. Well, if you liked what you heard there from Brandon Tatum, you can see him live next week here in St. Louis. Let's talk about all of that event and the great organization that's putting it on for all of us here in the St. Louis lands and beyond. Nick Johnson, St. Louis Market Director at the Vitae Foundation, joining us once again on the program. Nick, good afternoon. Welcome back to the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys very much.
Nick, before we dive into the details of what looks like a really exciting dinner next week here in St. Louis, let's remind our folks about Vitae and what it does. Maybe it's not something that folks are a lot of times focused on the very political organizations around the pro-life debate. But Chris and I were talking earlier about Vitae's unique because you do so much of the hard work behind the scenes to try to change the entire culture and conversation around abortion versus life. Isn't that right?
I agree. So Vitae is very much what you would say behind the scenes. There's not necessarily our name out there on even some of the things that we do. We do those things behind the scenes, and it has somebody else's name on it when it's front and center or on the pages of the book or on the screens in front of everybody's faces. So Vitae Foundation has been around for more than 3 decades and really, work with things on the political side and on the religious side and all sorts of other groups. But really what it comes down to and starts with for Vitae Foundation and what makes us different and unique is research. And our research is different from what people might think of. It's not surveys and polling and just fill out this questionnaire for us, but it's actually long, in-depth, emotional interviews that really rely on repetition and relaxation and taking these respondents who don't know they're doing a pro-life interview, they don't know they're doing a Vitae interview, and taking them back to some of those earliest experiences around this life issue and knowing what are the motivators, what are the detractors, and really those emotional drivers for their decision-making process, and then taking those findings and applying those to messages and strategies to really create ads for life. Particularly, a lot of our work is with pro-life pregnancy centers, and it's really to reach women in that what now moment when they find out they're pregnant, they don't want to be pregnant, And between them and the darkness of a closet or a bathroom, and they're going online and they're searching for things, we know what they're searching for. We know those keywords and those terms. And so we can apply those to what our messaging strategies are. So instead of finding abortion services, they can actually find real help from pregnancy centers across the country and around the world.
You know, Nick, when you think of abortion and a life issue, of course you think of the woman because she's the one that carries the child. She is the one that is going to have the potential abortion. And you mentioned a lot of the research that the Vitae Foundation does. One of your research projects was a men's study. Can you give us the details on that?
Right, and rightly so. And so again, for 3 decades, the other research studies have really primarily focused on the woman's side and empowering her to make the right decisions. But knowing that, yes, it takes two to tango, and that, yes, there's a man involved in the equation, and knowing that for too long, men have been told they don't have a voice, that it is a women's issue, no uterus, no opinion, my body, my choice, all the other sayings and euphemisms that maybe sound good on the surface level, but they really don't, and they're really not true, and that really oftentimes a woman comes to the man, whether they're in a committed relationship, girlfriend, boyfriend relationship, married relationships even, and she doesn't want to be pregnant, or she doesn't know what to do now that she is pregnant, so she's reaching out for help and even just needing him as the father to respond positively, not knowing all the answers, not knowing exactly what to do or what things might look like, but we can figure this out, we can do this, and making sure that he's empowered to be part of those meaningful and powerful conversations for life as well. And so, yes, we did that first study about men just this last year. So really, we're in the part where we're applying those findings. So we test out things with some ads for men, knowing what they're searching for, knowing what is important to them in this decision-making process, and then just being able to share that with all sorts of other men's groups, young, old, those who have been involved in these life decisions already, and those who might be in those circumstances later in their lives. So it's really that first men's study and knowing that they need to be there and really be that provider, that protector, that good, authentic masculinity that I think our culture is hungry for, and everybody wants it restored. Men are men and women are women, and each can play their part.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Following up on that, Nick, and Chris and I know this to be true because we've attended quite a few Vitae Foundation dinners over the years. You like to bring in a lot of famous fellas to, speak not only to the women, but to the men as well. Tell us about the dinner next week, Tuesday, April 14th, featuring Brandon Tatum.
Right. So Tuesday, April 14th, meaning this is about the last week to register. We do still have some rooms and spots available if you want to come as a single, as a couple, if you want to bring a whole table of 10. So it's Tuesday, April 14th. It's at the Hilton St. Louis Frontenac. Really, we get things going with social and registration at 6 p.m. The dinner and program starts at 7 o'clock. And then we're really respectful of your time and have you walking out the door usually right about 9 p.m. as well. So a couple of quick but powerful 2 hours. And most of that is Brandon Tatum's keynote. So some people may have heard of him. He is a contributor to Turning Point USA and is quite the mover and shaker in the conservative movement right now. And so you may have heard him or seen him on his own shows and podcasts or on Fox News or the Daily Wire. But again, he's a big contributor to Turning Point USA and has a strong personal story that you don't want to miss, being involved in this decision-making process with unexpected pregnancies.
Nick, as an African American, I can tell you how pleased I am that Brandon Tatum will be the keynote speaker. As you know, black women have the highest amount of abortion per capita. And there was a very sad statistic a few years ago that in New York City and in the state of Georgia, there were more abortions than live births among the African American community. Does the Vitae Foundation have a tailored message for black women, or is it just women in general?
Well, and one of our, not this most recent study about men, but one of the most previous studies before that, so in the last 3-4 years, really focused on the African American population and like what you're saying as far as just the travesty or how to avoid this culture of death and how to provide real help and resources. And what it is, I mean, it's different for every type of population as far as where people go for their messaging or where they turn to for support, and knowing that in the African American community, it's much more of a maternal figure, whether that's the mother or the grandmother, or there's a really important female figure in their life. They're not actually going quite as much to our friend Google to find all their help and answers. And so knowing the importance of that mother figure or grandmother figure in their life is, I think, really important for reaching more people in the African American community.
Speaking to Nick Johnson, he's the St. Louis Market Director of the Vitae Foundation. By the way, folks, Vitae can be found online, easy to find, vitaefoundation.org. That's VITAE, vitaefoundation.org. They're also on Twitter X at Vitae Foundation. Nick, I know one of the taglines of Vitae's is that one of their mission statements includes facilitating research about life issues to build a future where abortion is unthinkable. So not just, Nick, right, where politics or government or the law prohibits it or discourages it, but where the human mind sees it for what it is, which is the killing of a person yet to be born in the womb. Again, Nick, that's where we kind of have to get folks ultimately, right, is in the right mindset culturally on this issue.
Just to own that decision as their own. I think a lot of times, either way, in any issue you want to talk about, I think people just don't like to be told what to do. They don't want to be controlled, and there's lots of other powerful words that we try to avoid just because they turn people off. But if you can get people to think about it, and a lot of what Vitae does is create some cognitive dissonance. We don't tell you what to do or how to act or what to think or believe, but presenting that information in a good way so that you can actually make good decisions for yourself. And like you said, so to make it unthinkable, to make it unneeded, unnecessary, and to make sure there's all the other help and support along the way for those moms and dads and families.
Nick, in the research that the Vitae Foundation has done, what is the number one emotion that women are feeling when they're considering an abortion?
I think there's always that fear. And fear can take many ways, shapes, and forms. So a lot of that's uncertainty. I think even in, a committed, healthy relationship, there's just so many unknowns, and that unknowns create that fear of knowing what to do or where to go. And women then try to find, if you want to call it the easy way out or the path of least resistance. And so our studies have looked at that decision-making process and what goes into abortion decision-making versus carrying to term. And even within carrying to term, there's parenting or placing for adoption. And there's really just that loss of self or identity. So it's a very big change in a woman's life when she becomes a mother, and knowing that she can do it, that she can do big things and hard things, and that they're amazing people. The fact that they can bring life into the world is something that is uniquely female. Obviously, it takes a man's help, but I mean, it's their end of the equation that really carries the baby and produces and does so much to make that possible. But they don't know what life is going to be like 9 months from now, and so that fear and uncertainty can be such a big driver for them in that decision-making process, and just looking for what they see as the least of three evils or an easy way out.
And Nick, even though Vitae, I believe, is Missouri born and bred, Vitae's become a national in scope organization, right? And you work all over the country. Yes, you have this big St. Louis dinner, but looking at your website, I see you have dinners all over the Show Me State and even in other states.
Right. Jefferson City is our home base. It's the mothership. But we work with pregnancy centers and pro-life groups from coast to coast and nationwide, and whether it's pregnancy centers or conservative media or politicians or healthcare professionals or priests and pastors, all those groups that want to be pro-life but don't necessarily know how to be pro-life. We have a website out there called VitaeResearchInstitute.org. So it's a lot of letters, but it also has a lot of information for those who just want to be more pro-life in their everyday interactions. A lot of times when people are in these uncertain times, they don't always go to the person who's up in the front of the room or behind the altar or has the big fancy title. So it's important for everybody to have the information ready to help somebody if they come to them in a time of need. So we're coast to coast, so we work with pregnancy centers from Seattle to Rhode Island down to Orlando and Dallas, and really expanded that network for us. I'll admit there are about 3,000 pregnancy centers in the United States of America alone. Vitae does not necessarily have any sort of a goal or desire or capacity to work with all of those directly in what we do with digital marketing strategies, but we do work with a couple of handfuls at a time. And basically the trade-off is we do their digital marketing, and it's our chance to test the research. So after we conduct the research, then we have the chance to apply it and test it. And once we've done that, then we really try to roll it out to the rest of the pro-life world. And we do all of that free of charge at no cost to those pregnancy centers, where we're doing their Google ads and different campaigns to actually get women to make appointments and get in the door. And of course, also knowing that it's important to reach those men. And if those men come along with those women, then that's a big win-win for saving the life of the child.
Nick, one of the sad responses that I've heard over and over from black women concerning abortion is they have taken the view that it's better to abort the child than the child be born and be unwanted or abused. What do you say if a woman had that type of response to you that you were counseling?
Right, and that's even, I mean, what we've found from very earliest days of Vitae is that they look and they see that as the way to keep their own identity. Really, what I think of in my life, I think of not making permanent decisions based on temporary situations. So yes, I'm not saying that pregnancy is easy, even in the best of cases, or a 10 out of 10 as far as labor and delivery. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, not something that I've lived through, but I've been in the room and know that even on the best of days, it's a lot of work, but it's all worth it, and to not make those permanent decisions based on temporary situations.
Fantastic. That's Nick Johnson, St. Louis Market Director at the Vitae Foundation, vitaefoundation.org. Their big dinner here in the St. Louis region next Tuesday, April the 14th at the Frontenac Hilton. All details and how you can register at vitaefoundation.org. Nick, thanks for everything that you and your organization do. Wish you all the best for your upcoming event and all your events in the near future.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Chris. And also for any law enforcement, we have some free tickets available for anybody, law enforcement or first responders, who'd like to come to the dinner for free.
All right.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you. And God bless, Nick. All the best to you.
God bless. Thank you.
All right. When we come back, one final segment, jam-packed indeed. Chris, you're going to tell us and explain to us how there's no free lunch and there's no free buses.
No free buses yet, according to Mayor Mondami.
Talk about that and more. Prepare you for Larry Connors USA when we come back on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. The warming trend continues for Thursday. Mostly sunny to partly cloudy and 57 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon, a little breeze out of the southwest. A nice warm day. Friday, cloudy skies, though, some scattered showers, isolated thunder, but mostly showers on and off from the late morning on into the evening. Doesn't rain that whole time, but there'll be some scattered rain in the region during the day with a high of 71 degrees. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
If you have a phone, you have a radio.
Yes, I listen on my phone.
Download the all-new News Talk STL app.
Love the all-new News Talk STL app.
It is awesome.
And listen anytime.
Love the News Talk STL app.
Anywhere.
You know, if you're an active individual like I am, and I know so many of you are, because you're running around, running businesses and running kids and maybe taking care of your parents and your kids if you're in the sandwich generation, you develop all kinds of weird aches and pains in all kinds of places, don't you, from stem to stern? I have, and I'm not ashamed to say it because I know the place to go for relief for all those things. Comprehensive Chiropractic and Sports Performance, the premier chiropractic and sports performance facility in the region. They're 24/7 located at chiropractic.com. That's where you can see everything that Comprehensive Chiropractic has to offer to you. Yes, they do provide the foundational chiropractic care, but that has advanced dramatically. If you haven't been to a chiropractor in a long time, I think you'll be amazed at some of the technologies they employ now, some of the other things they do. I've been the guinea pig for some of, not just the guinea pig. I've had these things and I've been able to talk about it on the air. So yeah, the neck and the back, the knees, the joints, all that stuff, right? I had some tendonitis pain a year or two ago. I can't remember because it's all gone. And it was horrible, and it was very difficult to do much of anything with my left arm. And they did some laser light treatments on that, and they did this little thing. It looked like a tiny, tiny, tiny little jackhammer. Did not hurt, but it kind of stimulated that site there, and they worked on it, and it's fine as well. Got a little foot problem. I got all kinds of problems, don't I? I got a foot problem now. We're working on that. How about other things, more positive things, like staying in shape, getting in shape? They have the Health and Wellness Center upstairs at Comprehensive Chiropractic on their second floor. It's a beautiful facility with giant skylights, providing Pilates, yoga, and other classes with awesome instructors, lots of personal attention, licensed massage therapists, personal trainers, if you kind of need a whole home makeover, for your body, which is your temple, and dietary and nutritional support as well. They will give you lots of advice on those key items, and they have many, many, many supplements right there at their facility. Comprehensive Chiropractic, all your healthcare needs from stem to stern. CChiropractic.com. CChiropractic.com for all your comprehensive healthcare needs.
Hey, it's Susie Moore. If new flooring makes you think hassle, think again, because Michael's Flooring is changing the game. For over 30 years, Michael's has been locally owned and trusted for quality, variety, and amazing service. Whether it's carpet, hardwood, laminate, luxury vinyl, or ceramic tile, their expert team makes installing new floors exciting, not stressful. That's why customers keep coming back. Visit Michael's Flooring at St. Peter's, Starting Prairie, Creve Coeur, or online at igotfloored.com. That's igotfloored.com.
The party happens Saturday in Troy. Mike Ferguson here, and my friends at Whistle Pig Outdoors invite you to the Gobbler Gear Up. It's in the parking lot. Come for the authentic gumbo and crawfish broil, the live music, and over $5,000 in raffle prizes. And all turkey gear and clothing, 20% off. The Gobbler Gear Up is free, and it happens Saturday from 9:30 to 4:30 at Whistle Pig Outdoors, 651 Main Street, and whistlepigoutdoors.com.
Concerned about the condition of your windows driving up your energy bills? I was too. It's only called STL Windows and Doors. Call today for your free in-home estimate and start saving tomorrow. 314-277-5952 or stlwindowsanddoors.com.
Bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I want to ride my bicycle, bicycle, bicycle.
You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
We have breaking TV news. CBS just revealed that when The Late Show with Stephen Colbert signs off on May 21st, it will be replaced by Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen. The creative deal is expected to help CBS turn a profit in late night.
What we do is we keep the commercial time and we sell it directly to the advertisers. I agreed to pay the network millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, okay? So this better work or I'm gonna be in front of your house in a tent. This is the first time we've had somebody black on a big three network, ABC, NBC, CBS at 11:35. I can't let the white guys have all the laughs.
5:50 on the Tim Jones and Chris Arp show. And Byron Allen, those of my generation remember him on a show in the late 70s on NBC called Real People. He was kind of a goofy co-host of that show, and it's amazing how his career has really taken off. He is a billionaire. He has bought major television properties and networks. He turned into an entrepreneur as well as an entertainer. So good luck to him. I was thinking, Joy, I was like, wait a minute. There's been a black late night host before, but Arsenio Hall wasn't on the big three, was he?
He was syndicated, so the stations had to agree to take him, and he was mostly on Fox, so he was very specific with the words he chose right
Because
there.
I was like, wait a minute, why are you going to leave out Arsenio?
You're going to get the dog pound mad at you if you talk to him like that.
And I actually see some clips from Arsenio Hall's show. He has them on Facebook. I see them all the time when Prince was on there and some other major stars. So good for Byron Allen, and it's good to see a late night face, black face on television. And you know, just seeing his personality and how he is, I think he's going to be more comedy than political.
Yeah, he has those comics unleashed wherever he goes. Well, they're pretty leashed, actually.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
just sets them up for punchlines, but it's been very profitable.
I have a trivia fact about him I didn't know.
Yeah.
He was the youngest comedian ever to appear on Johnny Carson's The
Oh,
Tonight
really?
Show when he made his debut on that show in 1979. I didn't know that.
And I think that's probably what launched his career because he ended up having the show Real People co-hosting that on NBC in 1979, according to my notes here. No, Joey, I didn't know that offhand. I got that from my notes. So that probably launched his career.
I would imagine so. I don't know a whole lot about him, but from that clip we played there, he sounds like a pretty upbeat, jovial guy, and maybe he can turn around just the morass of late-night TV.
Joey probably knows this. Joey, what are the networks that he has bought? Did he buy BET and some other? He's bought like some major
I forget.
TV shows.
I know when I was a kid, you'd be watching cartoons Saturday morning, and then the paid programs would start rolling in. You'd be like, oh, I guess cartoons are over, and I got to go play outside. But you'd often see the Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen come in, and you'd think, well, this is pretty entertaining.
Well, good for him. All right. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani has told Politico that his plan for free buses in New York City won't be happening this year. The mayor said, we're encouraged by the conversations we're having with the governor and legislative leaders to take action on that in 2027 as a first step. So he's saying next year is a first step. I wouldn't hold my breath if I lived in New York City expecting free buses anytime soon. I know the plan that he has to help with rents in New York City is coming up against a lot of obstruction. A lot of the mom and pop type of entrepreneurs and landlords are against it because, you know, that's how they make their money. And under his plan, you won't be able to raise your rent. So he's hurting the little guy. So imagine that.
So you're telling me that government centralized planning doesn't really work?
No, I think you can look over in the Soviet Union and can see that that's not a good plan. Well, we talk about how the media is hurting and they're laying off people. Here is one media publication that I will not be crying about. They're not going out of business, but ProPublica journalists are striking for a day, partly over AI. And if you remember ProPublica, they're the ones that do these investigations only on conservatives, like they did on Justice Thomas when he received that bus, paid for it in full, that he got from a wealthy man. But ProPublica journalists walked off the job on Wednesday for 24 hours after more than 2 years of negotiations that failed to yield a deal for a union contract. It was the first major labor action at ProPublica. So ProPublica is a far, far left-wing organization. So I'm not losing a lot of sleep over that.
Yeah. Chris, I did a search the other day about, I was like, what would AI tell me about what AI is not going to replace? And I was like,
Talk show host?
I wonder, well, I think we qualify for one of these. I was like, will it give me a list of anything or will it say, AI will replace everything? It actually gave me a list of jobs. And basically, Chris, I think we would qualify under this, although Joey might be suspect about this description. Jobs least likely to be replaced by AI involve high-level creativity. I think we do that here.
I hope so. Jeff?
Complex empathy. We care about people.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Not Democrats.
Skilled manual labor in unpredictable environments. That's Joey's job.
Yeah, AI can't do plumbing.
No. And strategic decision-making that affect humans. So there you go.
I don't know. That's one I'd be a little suspect at as AI advances. I was reading a story during the break that Anthropic has a new AI model that they say is too powerful to release to the public. So go figure. I didn't get more in depth on it, but just that headline scared me to death. Too powerful to release to the public. What exactly is it? Hal from Space Odyssey 2001 and is going to take over? I don't know. Tim, I want to get your legal advice on this story here. Former Senator Kristen Sinema says affair with a married man happened outside of New York, outside of North Carolina, and she wants the case dismissed because of that. She admits in court documents that she and the ex-husband of the woman suing her, quote, began a romantic relationship in May of 2024, but Sinema says the affair took place outside of North Carolina, and therefore the lawsuit should be dismissed. Your legal opinion on that?
Well,
You have to commit. You can only file a lawsuit in the state that you are committing the adultery. Is that legal precedent?
It depends if their domestic laws say that. Then yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. She's got a point.
She might have a point. It depends on what the domestic laws of the state of North Carolina are, and I could see the reason here is that what jurisdiction would a North Carolina state court have over an adultery matter involving someone who doesn't reside in the state?
Yeah.
And so. She may have a point because Kristen Sinema is not a resident of North Carolina, and if the offending action did not occur in North Carolina, then what jurisdiction would they have over domestic case? Now, very different than a criminal case,
Right, yeah.
Criminal cases, you can get jurisdiction over anybody anywhere, but on a civil matter, a lot of times courts will be like, well, this has nothing to do with the North Carolina judicial system, so we're not gonna load up our court system with a domestic matter.
You don't give her lawyer kudos for that?
I think it's very clever. Yes.
All right. Great show today. Coming up, of course, is Larry Connors USA. Larry's story behind the story. How Larry got his first ever sponsor. You've been listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL. Drive safe and have a great evening.
Tony Colombo here for Gutter Pros and Exteriors, your all-in-one service team that brings years of experience and quality that's affordable right to your doorstep. Christine and I discovered Gutter Pros and Exteriors when we bought our home and inherited a gutter problem, and they've also repaired